A soft-spoken restaurant manager is gunned down in his own home.
I just opened the door a little bit and just looked in there and he's laying there.
She saw blood everywhere, on the walls, on the floor.
My reaction was like, no. I had blanked out.
In the crime's aftermath, the victim's girlfriend is nowhere to be found.
It just didn't feel right because she was gone. We couldn't find her. Her cell phone was gone. It was off. It was missing. Could she have possibly been kidnapped?
Working round the clock to crack the case, police uncover one horrific detail after another.
Someone had been saying that he was gonna kill this girl.
He's been shot with blood and everything spewing out of his neck. He manages to get up and try to fight for his life.
All I can tell you is there was no doubt in my mind. I mean, it was pure evil is what it was.
November 22nd, 2010. On a chilly evening in Aurora, Colorado, restaurant GM Eva Valles is growing increasingly concerned. Terrence George, one of her most trusted employees, has not shown up for his evening shift.
Hey, Terrence, it's me again. Haven't heard from you. Are you okay? I'm starting to get worried.
He failed to come to work, which is incredibly unusual, especially for Terrence George.
She's completely worried about Terrence, very much unlike, particularly an assistant manager there, to not show up, to not call.
Hey, Eva. I was talking to the other employees. Nobody's heard from him. Tried to get a hold of Terrence. Nobody's getting through.
Oh my God, that's crazy. Okay, I'm just gonna call the cops.
She calls the Aurora Police Department. They send a police officer over who goes, knocks on the door, no answer.
Unsatisfied, Eva drives to Terrence's apartment to do her own welfare check.
Terrence? Terrence, are you in there?
She knows something's wrong. So she went to the apartment manager and said, I'm really worried. Can you let me in that apartment?
You know, I don't like to do this. You know, it's important to respect the privacy of the tenant.
I know, I have this feeling that there's something wrong. Okay. Terrence? Hello?
Oh my God.
Terrence?
Why don't put your hands? You need to call 911.
Aurora 911, where is your emergency? Yes, I'm the property manager here, and a lady that came into the office said her friend hasn't showed up to work, and I have the key to the apartment. We're knocking and knocking, nobody's opening, and we go in there laying on the floor.
All right, we have a call in. We're going to have paramedics and officers out there as soon as we can, okay?
Within minutes of receiving the call, police and EMTs are rushing to Terrence's apartment. Little do they know, they are walking into a web of deceit and violence so tangled, it will take more than 6 months to unravel.
This is a good kid, found dead in his own apartment. It didn't make sense. It didn't add up to anybody.
We're just in shock. We couldn't believe that he died. We're just, numb.
It was senseless. It was for no reason.
Terrence George was born in 1988 and raised on a Navajo reservation outside Flagstaff, Arizona.
He had great parents, very loving, very into their religious culture as Native Americans.
Terrence's parents did their best to ensure their son knew about the family's proud history.
He participated in some of our tribal dances and ceremonies. We tried to speak as much Navajo as we could, but he preferred to speak English. Terrence grew up just like a typical little boy does, always exploring. He loved animals. He was very caring.
As a teen, Terrence also developed an interest in riflery and marksmanship.
He had a sort of a homemade range on the reservation, kind of near his backyard, where he would go out and he would take firearms, particularly loved rifles, and do target practice. He loved doing that.
By the time he was 17, Terrence had developed another all-consuming interest, girls.
During his junior year of high school, he fell really hard for this one girl in particular.
The first real serious dating that he had, he ended up having a child with the girl, so he really didn't have time to date anybody else. The cost of diapers and toys and clothes came up, and again, I told him, you take that responsibility.
By age 19, Terrence's relationship with the mother of his child had fallen apart. He decided to strike out on his own, leaving the reservation and settling in the Denver, Colorado suburb of Aurora. Terrence hoped the move would better enable him to support his son back in Arizona.
So Terrence George moved to Aurora and he got a job at a restaurant. He worked hard, worked himself up.
Here you are.
Thanks so much. Hey, Terrence, may I talk to you for a second? I'll make it quick. I just want to let you know how much we appreciate all the work you've done here. You've done such an amazing job. I actually want to promote you to assistant manager.
Really?
What do you say?
Yes,
Yes,
yes.
there you go. Here's your
Thank you so much.
Hey, it's my pleasure.
I really appreciate this. I won't let you down.
Keep up the good work.
He worked the night shift, being the youngest assistant manager. So he worked from late at night until about 6 o'clock in the morning. Hardworking kid.
With the promotion, Terrence's career was taking off. But in a city where he had few friends and even fewer family connections, Terrence's love life was stuck in neutral. That is, until a chance encounter one day in the spring of 2009.
Hi, how's it going?
Fine, how are you?
Doing very well. How can I help you?
This is my niece, Tiffany. She's looking for a job.
Actually, we're looking for help. If you'd like to fill out this form, we can sit down and talk about it.
Despite Terrence's obvious enthusiasm, the young woman, 20-year-old Tiffany Durst, seemed skeptical.
I'm not really sure about the restaurant industry.
We were over there, and so I said, hey, are you guys looking for any help? Do you have... Hey, I don't work here. Why don't you want to work here? You want a job?
It's a great place to work. Good people, flexible schedule. It's really easy.
She thought was, he's kind of cute.
Okay. Sure.
And so with that, she decided, well, I'm going to get the job, and she did.
By the following week, Tiffany Durst had become the restaurant's newest employee.
She was just a bubbly type person. She was a people person, never was mean. Like, even if she was having a bad day, she always smiled. And if somebody else was having a bad day, she always brought them up. Everything about her, her personality, her body language, everything was positive.
Tiffany's exuberant personality and natural good looks also proved to be a natural draw for members of the opposite sex.
Tiffany, she was very attractive. She actually pulled more guys than me when we were together. She was something, just out of control.
But like Terrence, Tiffany still hadn't found that special someone.
She'd always been in relationships before with guys, and she would be happy, but it was just, you could tell she wasn't like for life with these people. Like, it was just there for the moment.
But at the restaurant, Tiffany found herself attracted to the shy, kind-hearted manager from Arizona.
Hey, I've been meaning to ask you,
Yeah, what's that?
would you want to go see a movie with me?
Yeah, sure.
Cool.
They got to talking, and then from there, just took off.
Terrence George was influential in Tiffany Durst's life, and it's such that he was loving, caring, and those things that can make you be your best self.
He would bring her flowers. He would tell her, you're my girl. And I was just so glad that her desire for a man was someone who cared about her.
Let's cheers to us.
Okay, to us.
To us.
He already had a son, and she loved that kid, and she's always wanted kids, so that really attached her more to him.
She has started working. She has met Mr. George. They have fallen in love, and they're thinking about a future together.
In November of 2009, Tiffany and Terrence moved in together and quickly began planning the next step in their relationship. As her relationship with Terrence continued to blossom, Tiffany also was embraced by members of Terrence's family.
She wanted to have a relationship with George's mom because she was actually starting to fall in love with him. So I think she just wanted to get to know him, his mom, and his family.
She came to our place in Arizona. She treated us nice, was a loving person. We were good for each other.
She was like, I have something to tell you. We're getting married. She was so excited.
But all of the couple's grand plans are undone. When friend and coworker Eva Valles discovers Terrence's bullet-riddled body inside his apartment.
It was disbelief. How could this happen? What did Terrence do? Why did they kill him? Who killed him? And for what reason?
As police search for answers, they soon realize they have a second mystery on their hands. Where is Terrence's fiancée, Tiffany Durst?
I was worried sick. I really was. I mean, it's like what's happening. This is not the right picture here. We have a problem here.
Investigators in Aurora, Colorado are at the apartment of 21-year-old Terrence George, trying to process a horrific and altogether baffling crime scene.
Any homicide that happens, you have an on-call district attorney to come out, and then it becomes my case.
We go in, the house was in complete disarray. In the living room was Terrence George with the big kitchen knife in one hand.
There is blood everywhere. It looks pretty clear that he has suffered at least one gunshot wound, perhaps more.
Check this out. Looks like a bullet.
Yep.
It's clear he was shot with a very high-powered weapon.
It was a .223 AR-15 round and actually went through a wall into the bathroom nearby.
As detectives make their way throughout the apartment, they find what appears to be an empty gun case.
Terrence had a hobby of collecting guns and buying guns.
He had owned some rifles, an AK-47 and an AR-15, and then those were missing as well.
So where have all of these guns gone, and is it possible Terrence was shot with one of his own weapons?
When detectives discover a framed photo under Terrence's dead body, they realize his gun collection isn't the only thing missing from the apartment.
Seemed like he fell on the picture when he fell. Looked like a girlfriend or something.
In speaking with Eva Valles, detectives are able to quickly identify the woman in the photograph.
Do you know who this lady is?
Yeah, that's Tiffany Durst. That's Terrence's girlfriend.
The last thing that Terrence George saw before he died was Tiffany in that picture.
I don't know what to tell you. This is the last thing I would have expected. Terrence wasn't involved in anything as far as I know. They were both great people, great employees.
This wasn't a guy who was involved in crime. This wasn't a guy who was violent or anything like that. This was just a good kid working a job, getting started in life, basically, and all of a sudden he's gunned down in his own home.
Detectives wonder if Terrence had come home in the middle of a burglary in progress and was shot with one of his own guns.
We see all types of crime in Aurora. Everything from your DUIs, smash and grab burglaries, garage burglaries.
The apartment's totally torn apart. Drawers are open, things are flipped over, guns and rifles are gone. So a burglary gone bad is a real possibility here.
But in checking the apartment's front door, police find no sign of forced entry.
If someone broke in, there should have been evidence of the door or the lock being busted, but there wasn't any.
Do you have any idea where Tiffany Durst may be, or how can we reach her?
I actually tried calling her before I called you guys, but she hasn't gotten back to me yet.
A check of the apartment complex parking lot finds that Tiffany's car, a maroon Cutlass, is also missing. A chilling fact that raises two very distinct possibilities.
First thing I said to the detectives is, we gotta find Tiffany, because she's either dead or she's a suspect.
While police put out an all-points bulletin on Tiffany's missing car, they meet with her family, hoping they might shed some light on her whereabouts.
The police officer said, "Can we speak to you a minute?" I said, "Well, yeah, come in and have a seat."
This was hard because the families are just now learning about the murder and that Tiffany was missing, so they're devastated. But the police really need to talk to them to see what they might know.
I'm very sorry about Terrence. You know, this is a very difficult time for you. We were wondering if there was any way that you know of that we can get in touch with Tiffany.
I haven't seen Tiffany lately. Normally she comes around about once a week. You think she's in danger?
She is really concerned because she hasn't had any contact, any communication with Tiffany Durst, and it's been 4 days.
Mrs. Durst, we know you're very close to your niece, and we know you're not trying to get in trouble, but you have to tell us everything you know.
I know you're not implying that Tiffany had anything to do with this.
No, ma'am.
They're looking at her as if she is keeping her niece, trying to cover something and doing something that's illegal and committing a crime herself.
They thought I was hiding her. I had told them when they came that I would do anything in my power, that's my baby, to get her, to find her, whatever. And if she did do something, I'll be there for her.
But Tiffany's aunt and other family members are adamant that Tiffany was not a violent person.
I knew that she didn't do it. I knew she wasn't that crazy to snap on him like that, especially how happy they were at him. I just didn't see that happening.
While Tiffany's friends and family are convinced of her innocence, investigators can't rule out the possibility she was somehow involved in the crime.
Tiffany wasn't there, so that made me wonder, where is she? Did she have anything to do with this? You can't help but think all sorts of things, you know.
But as investigators plot their next move, they uncover a surprising piece of gossip that could completely alter the scope of the investigation.
They were fighting about something, and it's unclear what they were fighting about, but it may have something to do with the murder.
It's November 23rd, and in the 24 hours since Terrence George's body was found, police are no closer to finding the person who killed him, nor are they closer to locating his missing fiancée, Tiffany Durst.
They're good detectives, but I was calling them all the time. What are you doing? We've got a good kid in Terrence George who's dead, and I got another who's missing. Figure it out.
The case is proving to be a tough one. Tiffany's been missing, so either she's involved or she's a victim.
While they wait for the APB on Tiffany's vehicle to generate potential leads, investigators turn their attention to Terrence George's autopsy.
Yes, sir. What do you got for me?
Coroner report on Terrence George. He was shot twice, once in the jaw, once in the chest, hitting him in the lung.
Terrence George is brutally murdered, and it looks like he put up a heck of a fight in there.
He was fighting for his life.
The medical examiner notices that Terrence George has defensive wounds.
He also had defensive wounds on his hands. He fought back.
All right. Thank you very much.
Sir. This revelation breathes new life into the theory that Terrence might have been the victim of a deadly robbery.
Police had determined the apartment wasn't broken into, but it was still possible Terrence let someone he knew in and they took his guns.
And if this were the case, the question becomes now, was Tiffany involved in the heinous crime or was she abducted?
As detectives meet with Terrence and Tiffany's friends, it's clear that any involvement on the part of Tiffany wasn't that far-fetched.
We're individuals first, so we're not gonna always see things eye to eye. So this couple is no different from that. Tiffany Durst and Terrence George, they had those times when they had a disagreement.
And when detectives meet with one of Tiffany's close friends, they learn the details surrounding one such occasion.
They were having some problems. We discovered it wasn't going well.
Tiffany Durst and Terrence George, they had those times when they would be concerned about things or beg to differ with one another.
What can you tell us about the relationship between Terrence and Tiffany?
Well, it was getting pretty bad. Terrence thought Tiffany was cheating on him.
Terrence George had some concerns of infidelity, in part because she's speaking to an ex-boyfriend.
We don't know if there was ever infidelity there. I just know that Terrence George was accusing her of some of those things.
I was at the apartment a few weeks ago, and they got into a really bad fight. It got ugly. He was very upset.
Why are you lying to me?
Lying about what?
Apparently it was not physical, but it was fairly heated. So she suggested that Terrence or Tiffany leave the residence, at least for a night, to let him cool down.
She asked Tiffany to come over and spend the night, but Terrence told her everything's fine, everything's cool, we'll work out our problem.
Even though calmer heads prevailed that night, this was still something that had caused ongoing problems in the relationship.
They had planned to get married, but that plan changed. We don't know which of the two decided to call it off or if it was a joint decision, but we know that they didn't plan on following through with that.
Is there anything else you want to share with us?
Actually, yes. The night you guys found Terrence's body, he called me looking for her. He wanted to apologize for acting stupid, but he couldn't find her. He was really upset about it.
Police learned that because Terrence was unable to reach Tiffany, he enlisted a friend from the restaurant to check on her.
He wasn't able to get a hold of Tiffany, and he really started to get worried.
A friend went by the house, opened the door, looked in, and came back and said everything was fine.
So Terrence George had some concerns of infidelity. However, there was no evidence that this affair took place. But because law enforcement didn't have much to base their investigation on, Tiffany Durst was a person of interest.
Either way, at this point, they just needed more information.
That's when Tiffany's friend gives them the name of someone who may be able to sort out the truth behind Tiffany's alleged affair, Rodrigo Rosales.
I don't know if it's true or not. Someone told me that Rodrigo and Tiffany may have had something going on.
Now, there was possibility of an affair between Tiffany Durst and Rodrigo.
At this point, detectives don't know what to think, so the only way they're really gonna know what's going on is to talk to this Rodrigo guy in person.
The following morning, detectives question Rodrigo Rosales at the bar in Denver where he works.
Afternoon. We're investigating the murder of Terrence George. What can you tell us about the relationship between Terrence and Tiffany?
Well, what do you want to know? I'm friends with both of them.
I heard you may have been having an affair with Tiffany.
Wait, what? Who told you that? That's ridiculous.
Rodrigo denies that he was having an affair with Tiffany. He tells police he would never do anything to hurt his friendship with Terrence.
When was the last time that you saw or talked to Terrence?
I saw him a few days ago at my place, the morning before his body was discovered.
And where were you the night of the murder?
Listen, if you guys are trying to insinuate it has something to do with Terrence stuff, you're crazy, man. I saw him that morning, and that was it. I can prove I wasn't anywhere near his apartment. I was here working all night, double shift. Look, call my boss.
Police take Rodrigo up on his offer and quickly discover he is telling the truth.
Everything checks out. Thanks very much for your help.
Sure enough, Rodrigo had been at work during the time authorities believe Terrence had been killed.
Rodrigo Rosales may be in the clear, but detectives can't say the same about Tiffany.
The fact that her relationship with Terrence may not have been as rosy as it seemed keeps her at the top of the investigators' list.
You definitely got the implication from the police. They thought that she might be a suspect. But again, they didn't know. They didn't know who was involved or to what extent they may have been involved.
It just didn't seem like it fit Tiffany's MO. Tiffany wasn't a criminal. She had no criminal record. It just didn't fit. We knew we had to find her. She was the key to this case.
As police continue to comb the area for clues as to Tiffany's whereabouts, they catch an unexpected break.
They receive a report that someone might have spotted Tiffany Durst.
That's when it's sort of changed. This is not a suspect on the run. This one was very different.
It's been a week since Terrence George was found shot to death in his apartment in Aurora, Colorado. And police there are desperate to track down Terrence's missing girlfriend, Tiffany Durst.
While reports of a troubled relationship certainly has made Tiffany a suspect, police aren't sure that Tiffany's not a victim herself.
With few options, detectives return to the scene of the crime in hopes of finding anything they may have missed in their initial visit.
Police had talked to most of the people who live there, but it's always a good idea to go back because somebody might not have been around the first time or someone might remember something later, and that's exactly what happened. They find two guys who think they saw something.
Hey guys, we're investigating a murder in the area. Just checking to see if maybe you had heard anything, seen anything.
There were two males in the parking lot getting ready to go to their construction job. They're loading up their pickup truck.
Yeah, we heard some gunshots.
Oh, you heard gunshots, but you didn't call the police? Did we get involved?
Happen to see anything suspicious? Any activity?
They hear two shots, and then they see people come running down this outside stairway into the parking lot.
What color was the car?
Maybe dark red and burgundy.
How about the make? You know what kind of car it was?
I guess a Cutlass.
This is the exact model and the exact color of car that Tiffany's family said she'd been driving and what police had been searching for.
Let me ask you, you haven't seen this young lady around?
It's the girl.
Yeah, that was who was with them. I think it was her car, but she wasn't driving it.
All right, thanks guys, we appreciate your help.
She may have been kidnapped, but they have to look at her as a suspect.
The only way for police to know for sure is to take a closer look at Tiffany's personal history and see if there's anything they might have overlooked.
So they go back and talk to Tiffany's friends, and they find out there was this guy Tiffany used to be involved with named Terrence McNeil, and it turns out he's got a pretty shady background.
Though Tiffany's relationship with Terrence McNeil ended back in 2008 and barely lasted a year, Tiffany's friends say it greatly impacted her life.
Terrence McNeil and Tiffany Durst lived together, had a relationship, boyfriend-girlfriend.
He was from Detroit originally and had been living in Denver since he was a teenager. And he was involved in some pretty serious crimes.
He really doesn't have a job. His job is to burglarize people's homes.
He was the sort of burglar who didn't really have an MO. He would go in and he would take whatever wasn't nailed down.
He just takes things and he brings them back to Tiffany. TVs and makeup and jewelry and purses and clothing and shoes.
It's unclear if Tiffany knew that all of their stuff came from robberies, but I mean, it had to be suspicious to her.
I don't know why it is, but when young ladies get to be a certain age, they have this tendency, for whatever reason, to have these crushes on the bad guy, the bad boys. It's a turn on. And that's what Terrence McNeil was, a bad boy. And I guess that desire hit Tiffany.
But the relationship came to a sudden halt.
They were in the car. She does an illegal turn, and they get stopped by police.
You got a driver's license, registration, and proof of insurance?
Police run his name and they see that Terrence McNeil is wanted in conjunction with some of these burglaries.
They pick up Terrence and charge him. And at that point, Tiffany breaks it off with him.
He's found guilty, he's sent to prison, and that should have been the end of it, but it wasn't.
Once he served his 2 years in jail, he got back in touch with her.
When he came back down to the Aurora, Denver area, he was looking to hook up with his ex-girlfriend.
But detectives learned that Terrence McNeil may have had a completely different motive for reconnecting with Tiffany.
He was convinced that the reason that he got caught for those burglaries was because Tiffany had cooperated with police. He said that she snitched on him.
But she didn't snitch on him, actually. The police never even talked to her.
So while he's serving his sentence and supposed to be rehabilitated to go back onto our streets, instead he was harboring hatred for the person he thought in some way had turned on him.
Now, the question for police is, how deep did the hatred go? Did Terrence McNeil do something to Tiffany? Or did they reconcile and plan to get rid of the other Terrence in her life, that being Terrence George, so that they could get back together?
Working with Terrence McNeil's parole officer, investigators are able to track him down and bring him in for questioning.
In early December, they interviewed Terrence McNeil.
Came in, cooperative, was like, do you know where Tiffany is? No, don't have a clue.
He admitted having seen Tiffany Durst 4 times between that interview and when he was released from jail in October.
The last time I saw her, I want to say it was a Thursday, either Thursday or Friday.
And this is 2 or 3 weeks ago?
About 2 or 3 weeks
Okay.
ago.
He tells police he had no idea about the crime that occurred, but that he and Tiffany had patched things up.
Terrence McNeil does admit trying to contact Tiffany near the time of her disappearance, but had no luck.
Like, I tried to call her.
And then he tried a couple more days after that, and every time went to voicemail.
Yeah, it just goes to voicemail.
He denies knowing anything about her disappearance or the murder of Terrence George, and he also claims that there was no romantic connection between Tiffany and himself at that time.
Did you want to get hooked up with her again?
We could be friends, you know what I'm saying? We're cool people. She's real cool as a friend. You know what I'm saying? That's just how the relationship was gonna go.
Given the lack of any other information that ties him to this at that point, the police move on looking for a lead that will help point them in the direction of where's Tiffany and who killed Terrence George.
As days turn into weeks, police are no closer to breaking the case. But just when it seems all hope is lost, detectives uncover a new lead, an anonymous tip that could revive an investigation that appears to be on life support.
So someone had been bragging about being a part of a murder, somebody named Shorty.
They were hitting kind of dead end after dead end, and these 2 girls kind of came out of nowhere.
And there's like blood everywhere, and I'm like, oh my gosh.
It's been 6 weeks since the murder investigation of Terrence George began. In that time, police in Aurora, Colorado have discovered that his fiancée, Tiffany Durst, has been reunited with her former flame, convicted felon, Terrence McNeil.
McNeil claims there was nothing romantic going on between him and Tiffany. Of course, he doesn't deny trying to make something happen.
But given the fact Terrence McNeil wrongly believes Tiffany worked with police to put him behind bars, investigators wonder if McNeil may have targeted Tiffany for revenge, along with her new fiancé, Terrence George.
It's a suspicion that only increases on January 4th, 2011, when police find Tiffany's car abandoned in a nearby neighborhood.
People had seen it there for weeks, but they didn't think anything about it. It was just an empty vehicle. It didn't have any broken windows in it. There was no blood in it.
While the vehicle itself offers no forensic information as to anyone committing a murder, it does raise a serious question. If things were so rosy between McNeil and Tiffany, why would Tiffany just abandon her car and disappear?
The answer comes further into focus days later, when a close friend of Tiffany's named Dorothea Childs comes forward with a game-changing tip.
I called the Aurora Police Department and told them I wanted to report some information about a crime on the Tiffany Durst case. And they came in, we talked about everything that I knew.
Dorothea tells police that her friend, Lester Miller, supposedly knows someone that may be connected to the crime.
He was having relations with this girl. I guess she felt like real comfortable around him, and I guess it was eating her up, and she really needed to open up and tell somebody. And she told him they killed the girl.
On February 14th, 2011, police bring Lester Miller in for questioning.
So they get Lester in there. He starts talking about this girl, Shorty. He didn't even know her real name, but he does know she was talking openly about how Tiffany was murdered.
I couldn't believe she was really telling me what she told me. What she told me is some guy named Little Black. Okay. That he killed this girl. He killed this chick. Apparently, the girl did something to make him go to jail or something like that, and he threatened that he was going to do something to her. Didn't nobody believe it, but I guess he really did, according to her.
Police hear this, and of course they're thinking this sounds just like Tiffany's old boyfriend, Terrence McNeil.
Investigators comb through a database of known criminal aliases, but find nothing connecting Terrence McNeil to the street name Little Black. However, they do learn that in the days since their initial conversation with Terrence, he's managed to land himself back behind bars.
Terrence McNeil had been arrested on an unrelated charge, and he is housed conveniently at the Arapahoe County Jail.
He approached an inmate and he offered to sell him 2 guns.
And all the informants are calling this guy Little Black.
He's trying to get out of jail. He's trying to raise bond money.
It wasn't until he's running his mouth at the jail about his AR-15, that's when we knew where to point the needle of the compass and focus our investigation.
Investigators believe that the guns Terrence McNeil is trying to sell might be the same ones stolen from Terrence George and Tiffany Durst's apartment.
Detectives believe that if they can just get hold of one of the guns that McNeil's selling, then they could trace it back to the murder victim, and then they could connect McNeil to Terrence George's murder.
To try and nail McNeil, police put a wire on an undercover cop and sent him into the jail to have him try and purchase a gun from McNeil.
Are you McNeil?
Depends.
I'm looking for somebody who might be looking for something to offload.
The undercover detective, he's got a shaved head and a big long goatee, and he's got tattoos all over him, and he pretends he's in one of these white biker racist gangs, and he needs some high-power weaponry to take care of some business.
They dress him up like an inmate and put him down there with the inmates and tries to engage Terrence McNeil in a conversation about buying those exact weapons.
I have some friends on the outside that need a little help, so I'm looking for something with a little pop to it.
At an AR-15, I'm trying to unload.
We basically got Mr. McNeil to talk about, on that wire, some of the guns that he had and some of the evidence in this case.
McNeil takes the bait, he agrees to sell the gun. Now all police have to do is make the transaction.
But that transaction never takes place. Though they were unable to acquire the murder weapon, prosecutors still feel they have enough evidence to charge Terrence McNeil with the murder of Terrence George.
We put 2 and 2 together, and we realized that McNeil, he had the weapons that were used in this case. He had the murder weapon.
This is a bittersweet moment. On one hand, Terrence was killed with his own gun, which is horrifying.
The only problem is that it doesn't mean he pulled the trigger, and it doesn't verify the story that Tiffany had been killed too. There's no body, so there's no evidence to disprove the theory that maybe she had just given McNeil the weapon before she ditched town.
It's a mystery that lingers unsolved for 5 months until a grim discovery on April 7th, 2011 eliminates that possibility.
It's a fenced-off area. It's a couple of miles in size. It's completely brush and vegetation, high grass, wild animals, deer running through there.
About ready to head back?
An off-duty police officer and his brother, they were just walking around to pick up shedded antlers. They came across what was kind of disturbing.
Whoa, what is that?
It just looked like clothing under a bush, and then they got a little closer. They realized it was a human being.
Although the body is badly decomposed, the coroner is able to quickly ID the corpse. It's Tiffany Durst.
She had been there from November 19th till April 7th or so when they found her. A large portion of her body had been eaten by most likely some kind of wild animal.
The manner of death is brutal. in that it looks like there were some initial failed attempts to try to cut her and stab her ineffectively with a knife, probably a dull knife. And it looks like when that failed, according to the coroner, that ultimately turns to manual strangulation.
The development has detectives poised to charge Terrence McNeil with 2 separate counts of murder. But before they can marshal the evidence necessary to make the charges stick, they'll stumble upon a tale of violence far worse than anyone had imagined.
This is really messed up. I was really hurt.
They just wanted to kill him for the excitement of killing him. It was sick.
In the wake of finding the body of Tiffany Durst, police and prosecutors are convinced that Terrence McNeil is responsible for her murder and that of her fiancé, Terrence George.
Police had spoken to a man named Lester Miller who had secondhand information that implicated McNeil in both crimes.
She was just went into the story about this dude named Lil Black and some girl that I guess Little Black used to talk to. Apparently, the girl did something to make him go to jail or something like that.
According to Lester Miller's statement, the individual who clued him into Terrence McNeil's involvement in the murders is a woman who goes by the street name Shorty.
The problem is this is hearsay and won't go far in a court of law. Confessions have to be made directly to authorities and not through a third party.
To build a rock-solid case, detectives will need to track down and speak directly to the woman known only as Shorty.
The tricky thing here is that Lester only knew this woman's nickname, and it's a fairly common one. So if they can't trace her, it's possible McNeil could get away scot-free with 2 murders.
Fortunately, when police started working with Lester, they had him look back through all of his Facebook messages, and they realized that she had messaged him. Her real name was Janelle Harris.
On April 9th, 2011, investigators bring Janelle Harris, aka Shorty, in for questioning. She denies any knowledge of the crime.
I've heard on the news and whatnot, and but Black, he's mentioned it, like, and he's like, did you hear about that story? Did you hear about Tiffany? And I'm like, yeah, it's on the news.
Janelle Harris told the detectives, oh, I've heard about the story on the news, and the detectives are like, yeah, but we didn't put this out on the news yet. So that was kind of a red flag. And then at that point, she kind of realized, okay, they've got me. It didn't take long for her to break down in tears and confess. She got caught up in a situation she was afraid she couldn't get out of.
Janelle describes for police how on the night of November 19th, 2010, she and a friend, Tiara Holmes, became involved in a robbery orchestrated by Terrence McNeil.
She said they had just met Terrence McNeil just hours before, and they talked to them about doing a robbery.
He was like, I know she got like 50 G's from this lick that she hit, which I guess, lick is like burglarized. A burglary or whatever. So I'm about to set something up real quick. I'm about to get her.
McNeil offers them a split of the cash if they help ambush the man's girlfriend outside of the apartment that the couple shared. But in reality, Terrence didn't have cash like that.
So me and Tiara, we waited, and then that's when me and Tiara jumped Tiffany.
Describe that for us. When you actually jumped her, what did you do?
We punched her and, just basically punched her.
According to Janelle, once she and the rest of Terrence McNeil's crew were inside the apartment, the confrontation with Tiffany escalated even further.
Now it's game on. They hold her down, they start to beat her, they start to hit her, they tie her up, and they're saying, where's the money? Where's the money, bitch?
Tiffany said, you should know what we're talking about, there is no money.
Tiffany wasn't lying, there was no cash, but there was a case full of Terrence George's guns.
He says, I want those guns. And so he and the girls kind of load up the guns into the car, except they're not done. They want to take Tiffany too.
Please stop.
Get in, get in.
Janelle tells police that after abducting Tiffany, they drove to a secluded area outside of town and dragged her from the trunk of the vehicle.
We were walking up the path. He asked her, why I'm doing this? And Tiffany was like, no. He said, well, basically, it's because you fucked up my whole life.
So he makes this dramatic speech and then he kills her. He does it in the most intimate way possible, with his bare hands.
After a while, she stops breathing, I guess. He's like, well, help me drag her over there. I'm like, I'm not touching her. And he pulls out his knife, and yes, he was like, well, either you're gonna help or you can join her.
Fearful for her own life, Janelle helped hide Tiffany's body. At this point, she hoped Terrence's crime spree was over, but apparently Tiffany's murder was just a warm-up act.
So what do we do now? Let's go back to the apartment with the guns. Let's wait for Terrence George to come home, and let's kill him.
At approximately 5:30 a.m., Terrence George returned home, unaware of the evil waiting for him inside.
He came in, and I just shut the door behind him, and then that's when he sees Black over here.
The police told me that while that guy was holding the gun pointed at him, my son went like this to move that gun out of his face. And as he reached out like that, that's when that guy pulled the trigger and it hit him in here. And it came out from his neck.
According to Janelle, Terrence George then fell to the ground, but he didn't die right away.
Terrence George gets up. Although he's been shot, he some kind of way manages, with blood and everything spewing out of his neck, he manages to get up and try to fight for his life.
All of a sudden, he has Tiara, like, holding her, like, like from the back.
Janelle claims at that point, Terrence George tried to flee the scene by using Tiara as a human shield. But Terrence McNeil had no plans to let his next victim leave the apartment alive.
Black shoots him again. After he shot him the second time, then that's when we left.
It's a shocking account of unspeakable violence. But is it the truth? The following morning, police track down the crime's third participant, Tiara Holmes, and bring her into custody.
It didn't take long for her to break down and confess and show remorse.
But once we got the confessions from Janelle Harris and Tiara Holmes, we then filed charges. McNeil's still in jail on the unrelated burglary, so he never was released at all.
In an effort to boost their case against Terrence McNeil, prosecutors offered Janelle and Tiara lighter sentences in exchange for their cooperation.
Tiara is offered a deal. She takes it for 35 years. Janelle is offered a deal for 50 years. She scoffs at it. She decides she's going to go to trial.
She took her chances and she went to trial. And she ended up with 2 life sentences.
There will be no plea deal offered to Terrence McNeil. Instead, in August of 2012, the case heads to trial. Prosecutors believe McNeil's motive for shooting Terrence George may have been a simple but disturbing lust to take another life.
He told 2 people that he got an erection when he was actually strangling her to death, and he wanted to have sex with her in the field right beside the body. He enjoyed killing. Case against Terrence McNeil, our theory was that he planned from the beginning to kill her. He felt like she was the one who caused him to be in jail.
He concluded that she was a snitch and he was going to get revenge.
As for Terrence George, the state argues this kind-hearted young man was little more than collateral damage.
If Terrence George isn't engaged to Tiffany Durst, there's no reason to suggest that he would have met with any ill will by Terrence McNeil at all. It was wrong place, wrong time.
When it's time for McNeil's attorney to present their case, they attempt to pin the crime solely on female co-conspirators Janelle Harris and Tiara Holmes.
They said it was the girls who were behind this, that it wasn't him. Not a very strong defense, but that's what they tried to claim.
His defense probably knew going into it that they had a tough hill to climb here. I don't think the jury deliberated long at all before they handed down their verdict.
He got 2 consecutive life without parole sentences, 1 for each victim.
For the family and friends of both Tiffany Durst and Terrence George, the verdict is a small but ultimately satisfying victory.
They're there for life, not to ever come out again.
I believe everybody got treated fairly. I say he got 2 life sentences. He's never gonna get out and enjoy life again.
But that does little to ease the loss of 2 young lives before either could reach their full potential.
Remember her as love, because that's what she was about. She wasn't no gangbanger. She loved people. She was a beautiful lady.
The people that took away his life, they didn't care about my son. My son was a good person. He was smart. He was a loving person. It's hard. So, I miss him.
Tiffany, I wish that she was here. I think things would be better off if she was here. I do miss my best friend.
Home.
I just opened the door a little bit and just looked in there and she's laying there.
November 22nd, 2010, on a chilly evening in Aurora, Colorado.
To work, which is incredibly unusual, especially for Terrence George.
Particularly an assistant manager there, to not show up, to not call.
Aurora 911, where is your emergency? Yes, I'm the property manager here, and a lady that came into the office said her friend hasn't showed up to work, and I have the key to the apartment. We're knocking and knocking, nobody's opening, and we go in there laying on the floor. All right, we have a call in. We're going to have paramedics and officers out there as soon as we can, okay?
It didn't make sense. It didn't add up to anybody.
I believe that he died.
It was for no reason.
We tried to speak as much Navajo as we could, but he preferred to speak English.
His junior year of high school, he fell really hard for this one girl in particular.
For any help, do you have? Hey, I don't work here.
Even if she was having a bad day, she always smiled.
Tiffany, she was very attractive.
You have an on-call district attorney to come out, and then it becomes my case.
We go in, the house was in complete disarray. In the living room, it was Terrence George.
And there is blood everywhere. It looks pretty clear that he has suffered at least one gunshot wound, perhaps.
It was a .223 AR-15 round, and actually went through.
As detectives make their way throughout the apartment, they find what appears to be an empty gun case.
In guns and buying guns.
He had owned some rifles, an AK-47 and an AR-15, and an
So where have all of these guns gone, and is it possible Terrence was shot with one of his own weapons?
Getting started in life, basically, and all of a sudden he's gunned down in his own home.
Smash and grab burglaries, garage burglaries.
The apartment's totally torn apart. Drawers are open, things are flipped over, guns and rifles are gone. So a burglary gone bad is a real possibility here.
But in checking the apartment's front door, police find no sign of forced entry.
If someone broke in, there should have been evidence of the door or the lock being busted, but there wasn't any.
I said, well, yeah, come in and have a seat.
Had any contact, any communication with Tiffany Durst, and it's been 4 days.
That crazy to snap on him like that.
What are you doing? We've got...
It's proven to be a tough one. Tiffany's been missing.
And it looks like he put up a heck of a fight.
Fighting for his life.
The medical examiner notices that Terrence George has
life into the theory that Terrence might have been the victim of a deadly robbery.
Police had determined the apartment wasn't broken into, but it was still possible Terrence let someone he knew in and they took his guns.
They were having some problems. We discovered
She asked Tiffany.
Either way, at this point, they just needed more information.
You definitely got the implication from the police.
Police aren't sure that Tiffany's not a victim herself.
Might remember something later, and that's exactly what happened.
ready to go to their construction job. They're loading up the...
And what police had been searching for.
She may have been kidnapped.
Involved in some pretty serious crimes.
It's a turn on. And that's what Terrence McNeil was.
He does an illegal turn, and they get stopped.
For the person he thought in some way had turned on.
Terrence McNeil.
Came in, cooperative, 60.
The last time I saw her, I want to say it was a Thursday. Either Thursday or Friday.
And this is 2 or 3 weeks ago?
About 2 or 3 weeks
ago.
ago.
He tells police he had no idea about the crime that occurred, but...
Terrence McNeil does admit trying to contact Tiffany near the time of her disappearance, but had no luck.
Like, I tried to call her.
Then he tried a couple more days after that, and every time went to voicemail.
Yeah, it just goes to voicemail.
Did you want to get hooked up with her again?
We could be friends, you know what I'm saying? We're cool people. She's real cool as a friend. You know what I'm saying? That's just how the relationship was going to go.
Given the lack of any other information that ties him to this at that point, the police move on.
They were hitting kind of dead end after dead end. Just kind of came out of nowhere.
And there's like blood everywhere. I'm like, oh my gosh.
McNeil claims there was nothing romantic going on between him and Tiffany.
When police find Tiffany's car abandoned in a nearby neighborhood.
It didn't have any broken windows in it. There was no blood in it.
While the vehicle itself offers no forensic information as to anyone committing a murder, it does raise a serious question.
I told them I wanted to report some information about a crime on the Tiffany Durst case. And
on February 14th, 2011, police bring Lester Miller in for questioning.
I couldn't believe she was really telling me what she told me. What she told me is some guy named Little Black.
Okay.
That he killed this girl. He killed this chick. Apparently, the girl did something to make him go to jail or something like that, and he threatened that he was going to do something to her. Didn't nobody believe it, but I guess he really did, according to her.
And he is housed conveniently at the Arapahoe County.
He offered to sell him 2 guns.
He's trying to get out of jail. He's trying to...
We knew where to point the needle of the compass.
Until a grim discovery on April 7th, 2011 eliminates that possibility.
In both crimes.
She was just went into the story about this dude named Little Black and some girl that I guess Little Black used to talk to. Apparently, the girl did something to make him go to jail or something like that.
And not through a third party.
And they realized that she had messaged him. Her real name was Janelle Harris.
On April 9th, 2011, investigators bring Janelle Harris, a.k.a. Shorty, in for questioning. She denies any knowledge of the crime.
I've heard on the news and whatnot, and well, Black, he mentioned it, like, and he's like, did you hear about that story? Did you hear about Tiffany? And I'm like, yeah, it's on the news.
Janelle Harris told the detectives, oh, I've heard about the story on the news, and the detectives are like, yeah, but we didn't put this out on the news yet. So that was kind of a red flag. And then at that point, she kind of realized, okay, they've got me. She got caught up in a situation she was afraid she couldn't get out of.
And he talked to them about doing a robbery.
He was like, I know she got like 50 G's from this lick that she hit, which I guess, lick is like burglarized. A burglary or whatever. So I'm about to set something up real quick. I'm about to get her.
So me and Tiara, we waited, and then that's when me and Tiara jumped Tiffany.
Describe that for us. When you actually jumped her, what did you do?
We punched her and, just basically punched her.
Where's the money, bitch?
Tiffany said, you just know what we're talking about, there is no money.
Tiffany wasn't lying. There was
area outside of town and dragged her from the trunk of the vehicle.
We were walking up the path. He asked her, why I'm doing this? And Tiffany was like, no. He said, well, basically, it's because you fucked up my whole life. After a while, she stops breathing, I guess. He's like, well, help me drag her over there. I'm like, I'm not touching her. And he pulls out his knife, and yes, he was like, well, either you're going to help or you can join her.
Terrence George returned home, unaware of the evil waiting for him inside.
He came in, and I just shut the door behind him, and then that's when he sees Black over here.
Went like this to move that gun out of his face. And as he reached out like that, that's when that guy pulled the trigger, and it hit him in here. And it came out from his neck.
Terrence George gets up.
All of a sudden, he has Tiara, holding her, from the back.
Janelle claims
Black shoots him again. After he shot him the second time, then that's when we left.
it's a shocking account of unspeakable violence. But is it the truth? The following morning, police tracked down the crime's third participant.
It didn't take long for her to break down.
But once we got the confessions from...
She takes it for 35 years. Janelle is offered a deal for 50 years. She scoffs at it. She decides she's going to go to trial.
Defense probably knew going into it that they had a tough hill to climb here.
They're there for life, not to ever come out again.
Never gonna get out and enjoy life again.
My son was a good person.